So people are really sounding off right now because Steven Crowder went on a pretty wildly racist tirade against black farmers. Now, if you don't know, the stimulus package included $5 billion in relief for black farmers, especially because of the long history of the United States in terms of discriminating against black farmers. Now, as you guys know, farmers, especially in recent past couple of years, have been on the receiving end of a lot of relief. You know what I mean? So they've been on the receiving end of a lot of relief, but there's always inequities in almost literally every area of life in the United States. Black people are always getting the short end of the stick of pretty much everything. And so there's no difference when it comes to the credit and relief that black farmers were given, and we'll get into that in a second. But what you're going to see here is Steven Crowder reacts to this piece of legislation inside the big package of COVID relief. And what you're going to see is him and his buddies are just going to go full-on racist and use basically every single stereotype you can imagine.
I don't know where you find this many farmers of color, but they did. And $5.2 billion are being allocated exclusively for colored farmers. Farmers of color, farmers of color. Roll the tape.
We begin today's show looking at a major provision in President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill that aims to address decades of discrimination against Black, Hispanic, Native American, and Asian American farmers who've historically been excluded from government agricultural programs. The American Rescue Plan sets aside $10.4 billion for agriculture support and allocates about half the funds to farmers of color who are, quote, subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice because of their identity as members of a group, unquote. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights confirmed as long ago as 1965 the U.S. Department of Agriculture discriminated against black farmers, but little was done to address the problem.
100 years ago?
Yeah, most happy about the new policy, these people. So, yeah. I'm gonna buy a plow, man.
I'm going to plant that corn.
Go get a John Deere. Barack Obama, mother, I'm the president of plowing that ass. You.
I thought the last thing they would want to do was be farmers. Wasn't that a big problem for hundreds of years?
Yeah.
Isn't that why Arsenio Hall called himself the urban man's Johnny Carson?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Are people lining up out in the middle of cornfield, Iowa for new dunks?
How would you prove this, by the way? Like, how would you prove that you've been discriminated
You don't
against?
have to. You just
Well, I
say.
didn't get that loan. Sir, you had no credit. Well, that should not have stopped me from getting the loan.
I planted a Hennessy tree, but it's not growing.
Well, technically it did grow, but that shit ain't XO.
I put it in the ground.
I planted a VSOP XO tree. I'm getting in some niche esoteric cognac humor, motherfucker.
Don't white people just go to their neighborhoods and build urban farms and ruin their communities? Isn't that what
That's how it works.
In Detroit. Turns out the soil content, there's a high level of meth.
Yeah, crazy. Whoa.
Wow, I didn't know.
That and teeth.
There's
Random teeth littered everywhere.
And by the way,
pain in my arugula.
So obviously what you can see there was incredibly, incredibly racist. Also incredibly, incredibly unfunny. So he's kind of committed to the main sins here. One being incredibly racist and B being incredibly unfunny. So what you saw there, obviously, they even made a joke about, slavery, essentially, when the guy says, I thought they didn't want to do farming. I'm assuming that's a reference to saying, they were slaves. I thought they didn't want to be that anymore. Very bizarre. Also playing on this stereotype that every black person is this Hennessy drinking, meth doing, rap listener with the accent that he was using or whatever. Incredibly, incredibly stereotypical. Very, very damaging, obviously. It's just a massive piece of shit move. It's just not true. And obviously it's very harmful and very dangerous, as you can see there. Just super, super racist. I'm actually shocked that they would do this, to even have the balls to do this. This is really extreme. As you guys know, Steven Crowder has made some really sketchy rape jokes as well. He made a joke in the past where, I should say quote-unquote joke, because he's not funny. And it said something like, if a feminist is raped in a forest, did she actually get raped or something like that. He's done a lot of sketchy shit. This guy is a pretty massive piece of shit. And also, he's incredibly unfunny. But you guys may or may not actually know, this kind of gives a good opportunity to really highlight the discriminatory practices that have been used against black people. But again, I want to say, generally speaking, throughout American history, anything that has happened, that's whether it's relief or giving credit or things of that nature, it's always been inequitable because of racism, right? So even the New Deal, for example, was black people getting the short end of the stick, okay? That's just what happens throughout all of American history, so it's not surprising when that kind of a thing happens. But there's actually a lawsuit. So this says, for more than a century, the USDA's discriminatory policies have been a fact of life for black farmers, but they first came to national attention in 1997, after Timothy Pigford and 400 black farmers filed a class action lawsuit against the agency. That suit, known as Pigford versus Glickman, charged the USDA with discriminating against black farmers when distributing loans, and also with failing to investigate complaints regarding this widespread bias. The government ultimately settled, compensating more than 16,200 black farmers victimized by these racist practices. Only 371 black farmers received debt relief. In 2010, the agency announced the second Pigford settlement of $1.25 billion, which compensated thousands of additional farmers who had missed the original filing deadline. It says, altogether, the Pigford case represents the largest discrimination settlement ever paid by the federal government. The racism exposed by Pigford had its roots in the mostly white local committees charged with distributing USDA loans to farmers. In the South especially, it was common for these government officials to deny black farmers access to credit, to intentionally delay the release of funds to blacks, or to ignore their loan applications altogether. And so that's something that should be the least surprising thing ever. Racism has been incredibly prevalent in the United States. You know what I mean? And you're talking about the past some years, during these times, of course, mostly white people who are running, the USDA and running the local committees in terms of giving out these loans. There was redlining and, preventing black people from being able to purchase homes, so, some of the things that were alleged in this was, the USDA giving out loans would just be like, no, I'm not going to give it to you, or you don't qualify, or this is too much, that was enough. Just denying the same way that, home sales would be denied and things of that nature. So it's really not surprising even slightly. This is a very serious issue, of course. Black farmers have completely plummeted. And again, I have to repeat, man, farmers are constantly getting relief, nonstop, right? Farmers are pretty much like one of the bases of the Republican Party. But the relief is not equitable towards black people. It never has been. Racism has obviously been super, super prevalent in the United States, as you guys all know. So the fact that he's doing this is really just a really serious douchebag move. I don't know if there's going to be any repercussions for this, because this is some really serious stuff. You're talking about making jokes about obviously the most persecuted group in the United States, the most, storied history in terms of persecution in the United States. And it's fucked up, man. It's really disgusting. Holds society back, and this kind of debt relief is good. It is a form of reparations, essentially, which is good to see happen, because black farmers got the bad end of the stick. They got, they proved it definitely in court in that Glickman case. They obviously got the short end of the stick, as black people have sort of got in all of American history, essentially, because there's the history of the United States is filled with racism, and when you are passing relief for farmers, the people who are administering that relief are often racist, because American history has been run on racism. So I don't know why it would be hard for anybody to believe unless you are racist yourself, maybe, and you're convincing yourself that you're not. I don't know. That'd be the only way, maybe, but yeah, this is pretty crazy.